Hello, in this video module I'm going to show you how to make a headline with gradients inside. Just like you see here, it's a happy Hanukkah image that I downloaded from the internet, and you can see in the text there's a gradient applied, and the text is also kind of kinetic and twirly. It's probably the font, but I can show you how to, if you don't have that font, adjust the text to kind of distort it just like that a little bit. Okay, so those are two things I'm going to show you in this video. First, though, as always, go to Image, Size, and make sure you got enough pixels. Okay, I'm hammering that home because I can't stress how important that is. And if you're doing a postcard, chances are the headline will need to be about 4 inches wide, at least something like that. No, not too much smaller than that. So I would make mine about 4 inches. It's not too bad. So 300 pixels per inch, 4 inches, hit OK. Now you got enough pixels. All right. I took the liberty, I already made a second layer, which is the text layer. I just typed in Happy Hanukkah. I picked a font that was somewhat similar to what I just showed you. Okay, I just typed it in, and then I went to the character panel, and in the options arrow I typed in all caps, and that's how I got all caps. And I'm going to fill that with a gradient in a second. So let me show you how to do a gradient. I'm going to click on the bottom layer and make a new layer right on top of that by hitting create new layer. I'm going to make the bottom layer invisible because we're not going to really need that. Okay, so I've got my invisible transparency layer selected, and now what I'd like to do is click on the gradient tool, which I haven't showed you yet. It's about halfway down. It's hidden underneath the paint bucket tool. They share the same area. Okay, so gradient tool selected. Now I want to understand which color I want to pick, and I think I liked what they did with the blue to light blue, so let's do that. So first click your foreground swatch, and I'm going to pick a light blue. I'm going to do this quickly. I don't waste your time too much here. Okay, that's good enough. And then you can select your background swatch and pick a dark blue. That's good enough. Hit OK. So now you can see in your tools panel you have a foreground swatch, which is light blue, background swatch, which is dark blue. Okay. Now with your rulers, and if they're not up, you want to go to View, Rulers, Control R. I want you to click and drag guides to create a center point. Okay. This image is 4 inches wide by a little over 2 inches high. So I'm going to drag a guide about exactly 2 inches this way, and about 1 inch this way. 1 is fine. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect. Maybe a little bit more than 1. And if you have your snap on, View, Snap, it should find a center and kind of lock in as soon as you hit that center point. Okay. Alright, so we've got a center point, and that's needed if you're going to do a radial gradient, which I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you all the different kinds of gradients. If your gradient tool is selected and you go up on top here, it'll show you first of all what it would look like from dark to light. Okay, it gives you a preview. And these icons right here show you the different kinds of gradients that you can choose from: linear, radial, angle, reflected, and diamond. I wouldn't monkey around too much with these latter three, honestly. I would stick to these first two that are the most basic and important gradients. If you want to do a radial, I'm going to show you that first. Click on the radial gradient icon, and then as long as your gradient tool is selected, from the center point, click and drag out towards the corner and let go. Okay, you see how it just made a gradient for you? If you want to, it's going from dark to light. If you want to go from light to dark, up here you can deselect or select reverse and do it again. Okay, that's a radial gradient, and I like that because it kind of looks like a sun. If you wanted to do a linear gradient, you select the tool up on top and then just click and drag horizontally. Okay, and if you wanted to do it reversed, right now it's light to dark, left to right, you would just click reverse and do it that way. Okay, And if you wanted to just adjust the gradient a little bit, you could stop short. See that? Wherever you stop indicates how much of the first color will be showing and how much of the second will be showing. It's a proportion. So if I stop, like an eighth of the way into my click and drag from left to right, only an eighth of the proportion of the dark color will show, and vice versa. I can hit in reverse to change that. Does that make sense? Or if you go almost all the way. Okay, so it's a really cool way to do a gradient. But I'm going to do the radial gradient because I liked the sun effect. It's the time of the year, it's the summer solstice. And the same is true here. If you stop short, you have a small circle. If you stop long, the circle is widened. Okay, see that? And I'm going to go maybe like halfway towards the corner. I think that's, well, a little bit more, I think. There. Okay. And now you can get rid of your guides if they're distracting. You can go to View or Clear Guides. Or you can, well, yeah, Clear Guides is fine. Okay. Now, I think that I'm going to show you one more thing. If you like this gradient and you're going to use it, in my case I'm going to apply it to text, you want to do one more step, which is to blur it. Very often when you're printing gradients, they look banded, where one area of color gradates into another. Very often you'll see like a little line or a series of lines, and that can look really unprofessional. You might not see it on the screen, but when it's printed, very often, depending on the printer and the paper and other factors, it might show up. You don't want to take a chance, so the next step I would do is have you just blur it. So go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And I can't tell you exactly how much. You just kind of have to look at your gradient and see what looks good. Because if you go too much, and I'm going to show you that, it'll change the gradient so that it doesn't look like the same gradient anymore, sometimes. And you may have to wait, because in this case I chose 1000 pixel rate to see there. I had to wait for that to figure out how to apply it. Now you can see it looks like a flat blue area of color because the blur was too much. So we're going to go way down, and we're just going to kind of, slide the radius slider up a little bit at a time, wait for it to take effect, and go, just go as much as you can without interfering with the integrity of the gradient. Okay? So this may take a little patience. This will knock out that banding problem. Okay, now you see how it, did you see how the last little adjustment changed what it looks like? It sort of flattened it out a little bit. Maybe that was a little bit too much. So go back down. A little bit more. There. Okay, see? I think that's good. About 100 pixels. Hit OK. And now you've flattened it. If you want, you can go back and forth in your history to show you what you did. This was the original gradient. This was blurred. I know it maybe doesn't look as cool on the screen. Well, maybe we did a little bit too much. But trust me, when you're printing, it's going to smooth that out and make it look a lot more professional. Although I think we went a little bit too much. Let me do that one more time. Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. Maybe we could get away with like about 70. Hit OK. And now if you go back and forth in your history, now you can see that's a lot better. It's smoother, but it still keeps the integrity of the gradient. Great, I like that. Okay, so you've got your gradient now as its own layer. Now one thing you can do is you can delete the other two layers, save this out as a JPEG, and import it into Publisher, and you can use it as your background. Okay, that's a really cool thing to do. You can create a file size that's exactly, make sure it's big enough, or you can at this point resample it. And if it's just a vector gradient in Photoshop, which is what this is, you're not so worried about losing quality. At some point, if you're applying it to a roster element, you may have to worry about that. But in this case, make this a background that you can import into Publisher if you want. Okay, so that's a really nice trick because the gradients in Publisher you're limited and there might not be the best quality always. All right. Now what I'm going to do though is I'm going to apply it to the text I already made. I made a Happy Hanukkah text. I filled it randomly with red just so you could see it, but the color doesn't matter. Okay. First I want to get the text just exactly how I want it as far as letting, tracking, kerning, because what I'm going to end up doing, or what I am going to end up with, is a flat text layer. In other words, right now when you see a T next to the layer, a text icon, which means you can click your type tool, go inside the text and edit it like you would in any program. What that means is it's a vector layer. Okay, and you can do lots of really nice things with it, such as kerning, okay, tracking, letting. But what I'm going to do is rasterize it in order to do a paste into, because you can't paste into, in Photoshop anyways, vector text. Okay, so really all I want to do here is let it. So with the type tool, I'm going to select it. A really neat shortcut is Alt up and down arrow on your keyboard. Now notice how I'm adjusting the letting. But if you want to do that with your panel, you're going to be letting with your character panel. Okay, letting is right here, and this little icon here kind of gives you an idea of what that is. You can type in, different numbers. I think that's good. 40 is fine. Like if you typed in 50, see how it gets farther away. And so it's a very precise way to lead. That's fine. And you click off, and you've applied leading to it. Okay. And now what I want to do is, make sure that you're clicked off the type tool. You can click any other tool. All right. And make sure that that type layer is selected in your layers panel. And now go to layer, because you're just doing something just to that layer. Whatever's in that layer, you're affecting now. Rasterize type. Okay? And now what was a vector type object is raster. If you tried to use your type tool, it wouldn't work. Okay, this is just like a flat graphic now. Okay? What I'm going to do is center it in front of my gradient. Okay? And there's several different ways to do this. I'm going to show you a couple different ways. Okay, one thing you can do is you can paste the gradient layer into the text, and I'm going to show you that first. I'm going to make the text layer invisible just for clarity. Click on the gradient layer, select the entire layer. One way to do that is select all, Control A, copy. Okay, and then click back on your text layer. You want to select all of the text layer, which is a raster now. So you've got your magic wand tool, select the text, select similar, and then go to edit, paste special, paste into. And now to make it easier to see, I'm going to make the layer that you copied and pasted into invisible. See what you've done? Isn't that cool? Now you have text that has a gradient like a radiant sun right in the middle of it. Isn't that cool? Here's another way to do that. I'm not sure which way is better. You can go to your text layer. Okay. Again, same thing. You're going to select all of it. Select similar. You're going to go to your gradient layer. You're going to go to select inverse and delete. Only this time I want to create feathered edges. Okay, so go to select, modify, feather, and I think maybe 3 pixels is what I want. And now hit delete. Deselect. And the only reason I did that is to show you that you can feather the edges that way. So now you have, again, a layer which is text as graphic with a gradient inside of it. Okay, isn't that cool? Now it looks soft like a sun. So I think I'm going to save that. First I'm going to crop, because you don't need all of that. Just waste of file space. Okay, I'm going to delete, well, I'll just leave these invisible for now, these other two layers. I'm going to go to File. Now if you want to keep this transparent background, remember, go to File, Save for Web. Instead of a JPEG, you need to make sure that Ping24 is selected with transparency. Okay, and then hit Save. Save. And now you have a file that you can place into Publisher. Okay, yeah, that was the other way I did it. So I like this text too, this version. So you can save two versions. Save for web, Ping24 transparency, save. We'll call this one 2. I'm not going to worry about naming it. Okay, I'm going to do one more thing now with that layer. Okay, now if you look carefully in your layers panel, in the layer 3, in this case layer 3, there's 2 icons instead of 1. Okay, the first icon is what you pasted inside the text. It shows the gradient. So if you select that, it's already selected actually right now. That means you can make adjustments to it. Watch. If I want to go to Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation, I could change the color. See that? Isn't that cool? Okay, but I don't want to do that. But if you click on this icon, the one on the right, and if you hover over it, it'll show you it's a layer mask thumbnail. And all that means is that when you paste inside text or inside an object, it just creates a layer mask, which means you're seeing everything inside what you pasted into, and everything outside of that is invisible. That's all that means. Okay, but it also means that you can make adjustments to the layer mask itself and not what's inside, which is the gradient. Okay, but what I want to do then is click on the layer mask because I want to make adjustments to the text. And what I'm going to do is show you a little filter trick. Filter, make sure you're in image mode RGB, which I'm not, so I'm going to convert it to RGB, and I don't want to merge my layers. You want to keep these layers that I made invisible just in case later you want to go back. Okay, this is your editable file. So in RGB mode, go to Filter, Liquify. Alright, now see this when it's a liquify preview, and this black area is actually the mask. It means you're not seeing everything outside of the text. Okay, that's what I was trying to say. Now in liquify, what you're doing is you have a brush, and you're going to do a click and drag, and this circle icon shows you the brush. You can adjust that brush size. It's very picky though. Look at how big that is, way too big. This slider is tough to use, so you may have to just go in and type. Okay, I'm going to leave mine at about 150. And you can also adjust brush pressure, and I'm going to show you what that does in a second. Okay, now simply click and drag over the letters, and now you see that you can affect them to make them kind of wiggly and kinetic or dancey or whatever. Give them a little personality. Now I don't have the pressure very high right now. Now you see how the mask up here is coming down, and you're seeing the background invisibility. You don't have to worry about that. Okay, just look at the white area because that's what you're going to see. I don't use Liquify very often because it's very hard to use, and it can look really cheesy. You know, it sort of looks like, oh, you learned a new tool in Photoshop, good for you, you know. But if you have a low, if your pressure size is kept to a minimal, and you do just really subtle little things, like, you know, I didn't like how, for example, these serifs were like so slabby, and I wanted them to look more curvilinear. So you can just make these little curvilinear adjustments to the serifs, like I did. I mean, it's better to have a font that looks the way you want it to look in the begin with, but you know, this is a good thing you can do in Photoshop to do little adjustments. Hit OK, and see, now you've got a less formal look. You know, a little more decorative, a little not decorative, a little more celebratory. Okay, and then I would just hit File, Save. Now I'm going to just make a final editable file. How do you spell Hanukkah? I can never remember that. Hanukkah editable text. Save. Okay, isn't that cool? I thought maybe some of you could really find that useful.